I saw two films in theatres in less than 24 hours and I really wanted to speak to you about both of them. I want to speak about them in ascending order of quality because I think it's only fair that we celebrate what I loved more at the end of the video. So I first saw this morning the ADIVI, SESH and MRUNAL THAKUR starred Dacoit, directed by Shanil Deo. I must say right off the bat that I genuinely have a lot of respect for an artist like ADIVI SESH. This is an actor who has been working in the Telugu film industry since 2010 as a lead actor and somehow has created a niche for himself despite the barrier to entry that exists in the industry for outsiders. It is genuinely really tough for outsiders to reign for years to come in the top leagues, leave aside even be considered in the same conversation. SESH is an artist who has not only consistently tried to push himself with creative choices, but because your predicament is such, it also makes you a master of your own fate. So SESH's most popular movies are also movies in which he has contributed as a co-writer. This includes movies that I have found thoroughly engaging that include Shanam, Gudachari and Major most recently. Juggling the role of acting and ensuring that the product also aligns with what he set out to achieve from a writing POV is an extremely complex task. But this combination of SESH starring in his own written subjects always interests me. The reason why Dacoit featured in my most anticipated list of movies in 2026. This, however, of the 4 movies that he has co-written other than Kiss that I have not seen, maybe is his weakest in the tier list. Dacoit focuses on the life of Hari played by ADIVI SESH who falls in love with Saraswati played by MRUNAL THAKUR. I'll only be telling you about the beats that have been released in the trailer. There is a betrayal that is insinuated in the relationship and a jailbreak planned by Hari that leads for these ex-lovers to cross paths with each other. For motivations that you can explore if you have interest in watching the movie, the duo plan a heist together from a hospital, combining the courage of Hari and the driving skills of Saraswati to go scot-free. What is the desperate need to commit such a crime, as the movie is set in the period in which the country was dealing with the coronavirus outbreak in 2021 and the police that chased them, led by ANURAG, KASHYAP and Zayn Marie, forms the basic premise of Dacoit. Let me first get it out of the way what I genuinely loved about this movie. The idea. The premise on paper genuinely has the potential to be an adrenaline film heist saga. It's very interesting if you think about it, and the conflicting feelings you have when you step out of the film is precisely this. You could see the potential, you could understand the point of conflict of ex-lovers engaging in a heist together can be so interesting, especially when you couple high-stakes action and resentment and anger between two people. But this film's idea is praiseworthy, but it terribly falters in its execution, especially as the second half commences. There are instances where the score composed by Gyani is exhilarating, especially in one scene shared between Anurag Kashyap and Prakash Raj, or when all the walls start closing in for Hari when a shocking reveal is to be processed. I must say, however, most of the supporting cast are terribly wasted in this movie. This includes the likes of Prakash Raj, Anurag Kashyap and Zayn Marie, who briefly feature in this movie, do their parts in a competent fashion, but are not allowed enough screen time for you to have something profound to say regarding their craft or how interesting their characters were. Just on a side note, Kashyap is found in a chase sequence literally flying in the air, of course with the use of a body double catching Hari, and it's insane that the makers assumed we would believe that Kashyap could be so agile physically that in a blink of a moment Kashyap could turn into Tiger Shroff. Of all the performances, I think MRUNAL THAKUR stands out the most, especially when she gets to shine as the movie progresses to express her deep sorrow and frustration against those who have caused her so much trauma. It takes time for her to grow into her character, but in a string of performances that are barely allowed to thrive over simply mediocre, she is genuinely someone who should get a pat on the back for her effort. The reviews of such movies are the most tricky because these kind of movies are not complete hot dumpster fires, and neither are they exceptional in quality and storytelling. They find themselves in the middling grey area that is possibly the trickiest to speak about. Let me dive deep on why exactly it's the case with Dacoit. The cinematography by Dhanush Bhaskar and specifically the color correction of the team bothered me, for everything had this yellow smudge in this sepia-like tone attempted in the movie. Even when exterior shots are being captured, the hard source of artificial light created in order to mimic the sun look like studio lights versus immersing us in a location where characters speak to each other. I understand that the movie is not just a heist film. The title itself speaks about Ek Prem Katha, so the romance is its core. But for a film packaged as ex-lovers running away from cops, it should have adrenaline-filled action set pieces, at least a handful of them. But I was especially disappointed in the manner in which the the action choreography was designed. The car chase sequences mostly present interior shots of the steering wheel being moved and only points of impact where cars bump into each other or take off in slow motion. The high sequences of stealing the cash do not take advantage of the environment in which it is set. A hospital with multiple floors and a room allocated from where cash needs to be stolen can be designed with great meticulous detail. I am immediately reminded of how Raj and DK so brilliantly designed the long shots from Family Man Season 1 as the terrorists plan to escape the establishment, specifically the hospital. Here, however, the heist lacked any kind of structure. Even hand-to-hand combat in a secluded space like a lift are inundated with fast cuts, never really allowing you to feel like the action has been well thought out or edited in the film. The same goes for the integration of the music in this movie. I never imagined that Jonathan Gandhi would be featuring in an item song, and the sequence comes out of nowhere while ADIVI SESH is supposed to be a criminal on the run. He is found randomly dancing at a bar, clearly not having a care in the world. Again, I preface I respect ADIVI SESH and his hustle a lot, but his dancing skills need a lot of refinement or just need to be avoided at any cost. One of the biggest problems of the movie is that it wants us to emotionally connect with the two characters, but we barely spend any time with them together. The conversations are surface level, a time jump of 3 years is randomly introduced and we are to assume that they are inseparable. The conversations already speak about having babies and a family, but we never even get the chance to get to know them. It doesn't help that ADIVI SESH's performance is tough to find convincing. He is mostly poker-faced in this role, look maxing in slow motion while smoking his BD any chance he gets. Even his angst and frustration cannot get conveyed because the actor just can't seem to express with his eyes. It's a very stiff performance that makes the journey even tougher to get immersed in. The dialogues take the shape of monologues like in TV serials, where the characters' thoughts are said in open dialogue. अगर मैं इसे अभी नहीं बचाऊं तो ये फंस जाएगी, इसे बचाना ही होगा. Q saving her. The brilliance of ADIVI SESH thrillers is how the twists caught us off guard. Here, however, the writing incessantly spoon feeds the hints to the audience. This leads to many of the twists being easily anticipated. I won't deny there are some interesting surprises here and there. The movie, however, derails completely in the second half, especially its concluding moments, making you actually chuckle and laugh at what they attempt in the climax rather than thinking that it was a masterstroke in thriller writing. The film genuinely had the potential to be a stylistic heist film with heart, but its overstuffed screenplay and poorly edited action sequences really make you bummed out because you just expected more whenever ADIVI SESH ends up deciding that he is writing and starring in a Telugu movie. Moving on to the film that I thoroughly enjoyed, however, was the Malayalam movie titled Vaazha 2 that is causing absolute mayhem at the box office in Kerala, a sequel to the 2024 movie that also was a huge hit, and the sequel can be seen as its own individual film as it simply takes the format and template similar to part 1 but introduces us to characters who were there just for a brief moment in part 1. The real deep dive on their personalities and family life is done in part 2. I have to tell you from the onset that I loved this exponentially more than part 1, and I think it has to do with two things. The 4 lead characters are far more likable and admirable than the buffoons in part 1, and I think the writing specifically on the evolution of teenagers when they turn into adults is beautifully etched out in part 2 and is way better than the previous installment. You usually don't get to say this for sequels, but this film is one of the rare occasions where the sequel is better. The movie focuses on 4 school friends, the camaraderie that usually stems from conflict, a story of a billion bros as the title suggests, and how being careless and naive makes them engage in activities that they deeply regret, possibly altering their life and the choices they make in the future. How these school children become adults and deal with the hardships that range from family life, trysts with romance, teacher-student drama, and even the police forms the basic premise of Vaazha 2. I went in with not even watching the teaser and trailer, and I can totally see why a movie made on a mere budget of approximately 10 crores is going to have one of the biggest ROIs seen in Malayalam cinema. Think about it, just new faces, no stars, and such a celebration and patronage in theatres. Kerala is probably the only state where a favourable word of mouth works on the ground level, and you can see it in the financial results. I immediately fell in love with the editing pattern of this movie. It in several sequences juxtaposes sounds comes with significant events in one's life. The reality setting in for having a younger sibling when one is called constantly to simply do errands. You have the sounds of music, merry and singing in classrooms working side by side with an action sequence about to break. It builds the tension absolutely beautifully. The film in its first half especially is a riot of laughter, of adrenaline-filled sequences and such beautiful payoffs in the romantic relationships that I was finding myself clapping looking at the technical proficiency of this movie directed by Savan S.A. There is a sequence in a packed theatre where the crowd interacts with the police officer given the responsibility to control the crowd, and it's one of the funniest sequences I have seen this year in theatres. The universal feeling that you immediately get flashbacks to school from is how eager and keen boys are just to get into physical scuffles with each other, and how it develops lifelong bonds simply because one stood by each other at the time of adversity. Matter ho gaya hai was in everyone's vocabulary in North India, at least growing up, and Vaazha 2 builds the closest friendships with that same sentiment. The film aims to bridge the gap between generations too, that includes the likes of teachers, students and their parents, and how one's mistakes are not entirely independent from each other, how mentors, family and even the environment created by a sense of community shape future generations. Even though the writing of this movie shapes up to become PSAs and moral lessons that are on the nose, I think it's necessary to be provided when dealing with the topic of the influences in the lives of teenagers. I must say on a side note though, the terrible acting of foreign actors continues in this movie. It's absolutely atrocious. The four boys, however, Hashir, Alan, Ajin and Vinayak, are spectacular, and Malayalam cinema's knack of casting new faces, influencers in some regards, and acing it with on what kind of stories to place them is something that I've just not seen anywhere before. I saw this probably for the first time in Avesham and saw it in Telugu cinema on what they pulled off with Little Hearts. What splits audiences about this movie, and I believe this is warranted criticism to some regard, is the second half, where the teenagers who are now adults wanting to pursue higher education set out to achieve their dreams while still holding on to these friendships as a means to stay sane. It is here where the movie somewhat starts wandering rather than having a cohesive structure. The lives of the kids that were intertwined almost run in parallel fashion, with lazy events to happen so that they can reconnect. I somewhat wonder though, isn't the structure of Vaazha 2 in the second half also the nature of life when we become adults? On how we become so immersed in mere survival that we almost have to look out for ourselves, in the process losing out on touch with the best of our friends, only for the paths to reconnect when a tragedy strikes or something significant is to be announced? What many people consider to be lazy or lacking focus, I believe also became a harsh commentary on how fast one needs to grow up if one is to make something of their life when they turn 18. Let me know what you thought about this choice too, because this movie progressed in such a way that I was emotionally invested in the boys. I created a bond with them because they developed into becoming earnest men, and I rooted for them individually, making me emotional in some instances, making Vaazha 2 more than just a random fun outing in theatres, and the success being clearly indicative of its brilliant quality in writing and performances of the four boys. I'm still wondering on how the producers may be on cloud 9 on how this movie is being celebrated by the audience. These are the kind of stories that deserve everyone's attention. And that was the video, guys. Write down in the comments below what you thought about Dacoit and what you thought about Vaazha 2. Please don't forget to follow me on Instagram. The handle's right in front of you. Follow me at JammyPants4. Also, please support us by smashing the like button and subscribing to our channel for weekly content ahead. Thank you for watching.